At the family will reading, I sat quietly between the people who spent most of my life pretending I didn't exist. My older sister Celeste leaned in, close enough that only I could hear, and hissed, "Dad never loved you. You won't get $1." I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I just kept my hands folded in my lap. Aunt Renee, my father's sister, chuckled under her breath, like she'd waited for this moment. She didn't even bother whispering when she said, "She was just a mistake he never fixed." Their words stung, but not because they were new. I'd grown up with that kind of venom dressed as family. I sat still, letting their cruelty roll off me like water on glass. And then the lawyer, Mr. Keene, cleared his throat. Everyone turned to him. He looked down at the paperwork, then back up at the room. "Actually," he said, voice calm but deliberate, "Amira is the main beneficiary." Every head whipped in my direction. My sister's smugness drained in an instant, my aunt's jaw locked. Then he added, "And Mr. Langston left behind a video." That's when the room went quiet for the first time all morning. And that's when I smiled, not because I won, but because for the first time in my life, I finally had something they couldn't take away. The truth. My name is Amira Langston. I'm 27 years old, and until the day of that will reading, I never really believed I belonged to the Langston family. Growing up, I learned how to disappear. I learned to read the room, shrink myself, stay quiet, and never expect warmth. I lived in a house filled with polished floors, antique portraits, and the constant pressure of being something I wasn't. My father, James Langston, ran a regional finance firm. He was powerful, respected, and terrifying in his silence. I used to joke that he could freeze a room with just a glance, except it wasn't funny when you were his daughter. He wasn't abusive, he wasn't cruel, but he was absent in every way that mattered. He didn't hug, he didn't ask questions, he never came to school events or birthdays. The most I ever got from him was a nod across the dinner table or a reminder to focus on something useful. I wanted him to notice me, but I learned to stop asking. My mother died when I was 6. Car accident on the way to a grocery store. I barely remember her voice, but I remember the quiet that followed. My father didn't talk about her. Her pictures were removed. The house became colder. I became invisible. Celeste, my older sister, was 11 when Mom died. She didn't cry at the funeral. She sat perfectly straight next to Aunt Renee, who took over everything that day. Renee was our father's sister, sharp as glass and twice as dangerous. She helped raise Celeste like she was sculpting a legacy. She once told me, "Some kids come from mistakes, others come from purpose. Don't get confused about which you are." Celeste thrived. She had the smile, the charm, the grades. She spoke like a Langston, walked like one. She fit, and she made sure I knew I didn't. I was quieter, more sensitive. I liked to write. I painted. I cried at movies. None of that mattered in our house. Weakness was embarrassing, and I was weakness personified. At dinner, Celeste would talk about her internships, her networking events, how Aunt Renee introduced her to a senator's daughter. I'd mention a short story I got published in a campus journal and be met with silence. Sometimes Dad would glance at me with what looked like pity. Sometimes it was nothing at all. I moved out the second I graduated college. He gave me a check for first month's rent and security deposit. No hug, no goodbye, just call me if something serious happens. So I stopped calling. I built a quiet life of my own. I worked as a copy editor at a small publishing firm. I had a cat named Marley and a few friends who didn't know anything about the Langstons, except that I never talked about them. I didn't go home for holidays. I stopped answering when Aunt Renee forwarded Celeste's wedding announcements. It wasn't bitterness. I just stopped expecting to matter to them. Then, out of nowhere, I got the call. "Your father passed away this morning. Heart attack. You'll need to be present for the reading of the will." It didn't hit me at first. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the wall like I was waiting for a second call to confirm it. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel sad. I felt a dull weight in my chest, like something I had hoped for a long time ago had finally died, and I hadn't noticed it was still alive until it wasn't anymore. I didn't want to go. Every part of me screamed to stay away, but some small voice, some quiet stubbornness I didn't know I had, told me to show up, not to make a scene, not for money, but because I needed to hear what he thought of me, even if it was nothing. When I walked into that estate, The same house I grew up in. It felt smaller than I remembered. Colder. Celeste was already there, perfectly dressed in a navy blazer and pearls, sipping coffee like it was a casual business meeting. She hugged me with one arm and called me babe in that fake voice she used at cocktail parties. Aunt Renee barely looked up from her tablet. We sat in silence until the lawyer arrived, and as I sat there, surrounded by the same people who spent years trying to erase me, I thought, this is the last time I let them make me feel small. What I didn't know was that my father, in his own way, had already made sure of that. The will reading was scheduled for 10 o'clock sharp. The Langstons were never late to anything involving money or legacy. The room we gathered in was the same study where my father used to close deals, sign contracts, and remind us all, without saying a word, that this was his world and we were just walking through it. Mahogany shelves lined the walls, filled with leather-bound books no one ever read. The fireplace was cold. The curtains were drawn. It felt like waiting for judgment. Celeste sat closest to the lawyer, her legs crossed, her phone face down on the desk like a performance of respect. She smiled politely at Mr. Keene, the estate attorney, like she already knew what he was about to say. Aunt Renee stood near the liquor cabinet, swirling a glass of scotch, even though it wasn't even lunchtime. She didn't sit. She stayed posted like a soldier watching the perimeter. Her eyes kept glancing at me, sharp and calculating. I sat in the corner of the room near the window, not by choice. It was the only seat not already claimed. Mr. Keene cleared his throat and opened the thick leather folder in front of him. I appreciate you all being here. Mr. Langston left behind a detailed will, updated just over a week before his passing. Will proceed according to his written instructions. The moment he began, the tension in the room shifted. Celeste sat taller. Aunt Renee stopped swirling her drink. First, he read off donations. My father had left money to a few charities, a scholarship fund at his alma mater, a grant for small businesses in the neighborhood where he started. Celeste nodded along like she'd helped choose them. Then came the personal items, a vintage watch to an old business partner, a car to a longtime driver, all neat, expected. Mr. Keene moved on. To Celeste Langston, he read, a trust in the amount of $100,000 and the vacation property in Aspen. Celeste didn't react. She expected that much, probably more. But something about her posture changed, just slightly, like she realized that wasn't the grand prize. To Renee Langston, he continued, a financial stipend of $25,000 and the remainder of the wine collection in the cellar. Aunt Renee blinked. She said nothing, but her lips pressed together until they nearly disappeared. I braced myself. I wasn't sure what would come next. Maybe a single sentence. Maybe nothing at all. That's when Mr. Keene paused and looked directly at me. And now, before continuing, I've been instructed to play a message Mr. Langston recorded for this occasion. Celeste turned her head so fast it startled me. Her smile faded just enough to reveal the tension underneath. Aunt Renee took a full step forward. What message? She asked, voice clipped. Mr. Keene remained professional. He recorded a video to accompany the final portion of his will. He asked that it be played in the presence of all primary heirs. Celeste's eyes narrowed. Why would Dad record something like that? Mr. Keene didn't answer. He simply opened his laptop, clicked a file, and turned the screen toward the center of the room. Before the video even started playing, the energy shifted again. Celeste stiffened. Renee muttered something under her breath. I stayed quiet. I kept my hands in my lap, heart pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. As the screen lit up, the silence was electric. No one moved. No one spoke. Because what came next was going to change everything. The screen flickered to life. It wasn't a slideshow or a tribute montage like you see at memorials. It was my father, sitting in that same study, in the same chair where Mr. Keene now sat. He looked thinner, like the illness had already begun to take something from him. But his eyes were sharp, clear, focused. He didn't greet us. He didn't smile. I know you're watching this because I'm gone, he said, voice firm. I recorded this a week ago. I had time to think, and I need to say a few things directly, not just as part of my will, but as a man who spent too much time staying silent. Everyone in the room shifted. Celeste sat straighter. Arms crossed. Renee reached for her glass, but didn't take a sip. My father continued, I built everything in this life with discipline. I believed in control, in keeping emotions out of decisions. But somewhere along the way, I convinced myself that being distant made me strong, that silence, protection. It wasn't. He paused for just a moment. Then he said my name, Amira. My chest tightened. Everyone turned to look at me. I didn't tell you this while I was alive, and that was my greatest failure. You were never a mistake. You were the one thing I got right. You reminded me of your mother, and I didn't know how to live with that. Every time I looked at you, I saw the best parts of her, and I let my own grief turn into distance. His voice never cracked. Mine almost did. I know I failed you, he said. I should have told you this in person. I should have hugged you. I should have said your name with pride more than once every few years. But I want you to hear me now. You were never less than your sister. You were never less than anything. Celeste's mouth parted, but she didn't speak. Her foot tapped under the table, fast and erratic. I'm leaving the house, the company shares, and the primary trust to Amira, he continued. Not out of guilt, not out of sentiment, because she's the one who carried herself with dignity in the face of our neglect. She's the one who never asked for anything and deserved everything. Aunt Renee let out a breath like she had been punched. To Celeste, he added, you are capable and intelligent, but you became too much like me, focused on winning instead of feeling. I hope you find what I never did. The screen went black. That was it. No goodbye, no tears, just the truth, spoken clean and final. The silence afterward was unbearable. No one moved. Mr. Keene folded his hands on the table, waiting. I looked down at my lap. My hands were trembling, but I made no effort to hide it. I wasn't embarrassed. Celeste was the first to speak. That's not real, she said. Her voice was low but sharp. He was sick. He didn't know what he was doing. Mr. Keene responded calmly. The will was signed and witnessed after that recording. The documents are legally binding. There's no contest clause. She turned to me, her eyes glassy with fury. You did something. You manipulated him. I met her gaze without blinking. I didn't have to. Renee finally spoke. He must have been out of his mind. This isn't the man I knew. Mr. Keene slid a second folder forward. Everything was reviewed by outside counsel. There are no discrepancies. I didn't say anything else. I didn't need to. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one trying to explain myself. I wasn't defending my place at the table. My father had done that for me. Maybe too late, but he did it. I stood slowly, careful not to rush or shake. My heels echoed on the hardwood floor as I walked to the door. No one tried to stop me, and I realized something as I left that room. I hadn't come there for the money. I hadn't even come for justice. I came to hear the truth, and I got it. I stepped out of the study and walked down the long hallway of my father's estate, the sound of my footsteps loud against the polished floor. The same floor I used to tiptoe across as a child, afraid to speak too loudly or laugh in the wrong room. This time, I wasn't afraid. I wasn't pretending to be invisible. I had nothing left to prove. Behind me, the voices started again, first muffled, then louder. Celeste's words were fast and sharp, her voice cracking just enough to show she wasn't in control anymore. This isn't how this was supposed to go. I was with him every holiday. I gave up New York to be closer. I'm the one who helped run his accounts. And he gives everything to her? Aunt Renee didn't even try to comfort her. We can fight this, she said. There's always a loophole. That lawyer doesn't decide the future of this family. Mr. Keene's voice remained calm. You're welcome to consult outside counsel, but be advised the no contest clause is explicit. If you challenge the will, you forfeit your portion. That was your father's decision. I reached the front door, placed my hand on the knob, and paused. I didn't want to hear more, but something inside me held me in place. I had spent years waiting for these people to acknowledge my presence, to see me as more than an unwanted footnote in their perfect family portrait. And now that they couldn't ignore me anymore, they had nothing left to say to my face. I turned back, walked to the edge of the hallway, and stood where they could see me. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Do you want to know what hurt the most? I said. Celeste looked at me, eyes red. I'm sure you're going to tell us. It wasn't the money. It wasn't being excluded from birthdays or Christmas dinners. It was sitting in that house for years and realizing I could vanish, and not one of you would notice. And you didn't forget me. You chose not to see me. Renee scoffed. You always were a little too dramatic. We had responsibilities. You kept your distance. No, I said. You pushed me to the edge and then blamed me for standing there. I looked at Celeste. For a moment, I saw something familiar in her face. Not hatred, not jealousy, just confusion, like her world had spun too fast and she didn't know where to land. I didn't take anything from you, I told her. He made a choice, and maybe it was late, but it was honest. Her lip trembled. You think you deserved this, after disappearing for years. I didn't disappear. I was just outside your frame. You never once invited me in. I waited, but neither of them answered. Aunt Renee poured herself another drink with hands that didn't look steady anymore. Celeste lowered her eyes. I turned back to the door and walked out. Outside, the air was clean and quiet. The wind rustled the trees, the same ones I used to climb when I needed to breathe, when the house got too heavy. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was escaping. I felt like I was stepping into something new. Later that week, Mr. Keene called to confirm the transfer of assets. The estate, the shares, the trust. It was all mine now. He asked if I wanted to schedule meetings with the board of my father's company. I told him I'd think about it. What I really wanted was time. Time to sit in that house alone and figure out what it meant to inherit a legacy from someone who barely spoke to me. I wandered the rooms that used to feel cold and distant. I found a drawer in my father's office filled with letters, unsigned, unfinished. Some were addressed to me, some to my mother. Pieces of things he never said. Evidence of the war he fought in silence. I cried for the father I never had. I cried for the one who tried too late to make things right. And then I stopped crying. Because what he gave me wasn't just property or money. He gave me truth. And that was something no one could twist, steal, or erase. After the will was settled and the documents were signed, the house didn't feel the same. It was mine now. Every hallway, every cold marble floor, every painting I used to walk past without making a sound. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was mine to fill. I didn't redecorate right away. I didn't tear the place apart or throw anything out. I let it breathe. I let myself breathe. For the first time, I wasn't living in someone else's shadow. People called. Some to offer congratulations, some to fish for favors. I ignored most of them. Even Celeste texted once, just a short message. I don't understand what happened, but I hope you're okay. I stared at it for a long time and didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. I thought inheriting everything would make me feel powerful, but that wasn't the feeling that stayed with me. It was quiet peace. It was the relief of being seen, of finally being acknowledged by the one person who never said the words when he was alive but had found a way to leave them behind anyway. I spent days going through drawers, cabinets, and old files. In one folder, tucked behind business documents and tax returns, I found a photo of my mother holding me as a baby. Her hair was wild from the wind, and her smile was wide. On the back, written in my father's handwriting, it said, "She gave me the best part of my life." That sentence was all I needed. It was what I had been waiting for since I was a child, and it had been there all along, buried under the weight of decades of silence. I didn't hold a press conference or throw a party. I didn't post about it or tell the world. Instead, I took a walk through the garden and sat under the old oak tree my mother planted before I was born. I watched the sun break through the clouds and thought about all the years I spent wondering if I mattered. I thought about the pain of growing up unseen and the strange gift of learning who I was without anyone else defining me. That was the real inheritance, not the trust fund or the house, not the company stock or legal documents. It was knowing that even the people who fail us deeply can sometimes offer redemption. It may come too late for a conversation, but not too late for a reckoning. I forgave him, not because he asked, but because I needed to. Forgiveness wasn't about erasing the past. It was about refusing to let it hold the pen any longer. I kept the house, but I didn't move in right away. I made space for it to become something new, maybe a writer's retreat, maybe an arts foundation. Something that offered second chances to kids like me, quiet, overlooked, told they weren't enough. That idea made me feel something I hadn't felt in a long time: hope. People say families are complicated. That's not true. Families are made of choices: who we see, who we love, who we silence. My family made their choices, and in the end, so did I. I chose not to disappear. I chose to stay, to listen, to show up even when I thought I'd be ignored again. I chose to believe that somewhere, beneath all the damage, truth could still surface. And when it did, it didn't roar. It didn't break the windows or shatter the walls. It came in one sentence: a name spoken with meaning, a room that went quiet, a video that changed everything. I came to that will reading expecting nothing. I left with the one thing I had stopped believing in: belonging. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, or like your voice didn't matter, I hope you know that you're not alone. Sometimes, the truth takes its time, but when it arrives, it changes everything. If you found meaning in this story, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and leave a comment below. I read them all, and your stories matter here. And if you want more true stories about resilience, family, and finding your voice, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a new episode. Thank you for watching, and thank you for listening.